Let's come back to our pensions story this afternoon because the government is defending its decision to review the state pension age. Now, ministers have ordered a study into whether it needs to be raised above 67 after 2028. Labour are warning it could throw the retirement plans of millions of people into chaos. But the Work and Pensions Secretary, Ian Duncan-Smith, told the Commons that with people living longer, it was fair to look at it.
Countries like Germany and Norway and various other countries around the world have done so, and I think it's only right that we should do so as well, because otherwise we will place a burden on our children and on our children's children, and they will not thank us for that because we didn't take the brave decisions that were necessary.
That's the Work and Pensions Secretary, Ian Duncan-Smith. Well, today's newspapers are warning that you can forget retiring at 67. We could be looking at 75, 80, and perhaps even a culture of work until you drop. Hertfordshire-based economist and wealth manager Jonathan Davis joins me on the programme. Jonathan, good afternoon.
Hello, Roberto.
Jonathan, the prospect of working until your late 70s, early 80s, is that the sort of future you think we all need to prepare for?
I wouldn't be surprised because the fact is most folk have not prepared financially for retirement. They've put whatever money they have into property because they thought that that is going to give them a financial security in retirement. I think they'll be severely disappointed. I think, however, the idea that they'll be extending state pensions over the next several years into the late 70s is fanciful, but I wouldn't be surprised to see us there in 2 or 3 or 4 decades.
Now, you have a big thing about property. You don't think that has been, if you've invested your money in property, you do not believe that is a safe investment. But so far, Jonathan, certainly in this part of the world, people might say, well, you've got it wrong there, Jonathan.
If we are going to move on to this conversation, the fact is that over the last 30 or 40 years, interest rates have gone from 20% to practically zero. So mortgage rates have gone from 20% to about 2%, and they can't go down much more. We're having massive buy-to-let taxation changes coming in from next month, so that the buy-to-let investment opportunity is simply going to be uneconomic for most investors, we seem to be at the end game in the debt explosion now. So put all the three together, the outlook for house prices is at best flat and more likely negative.
Last week there was a story of how Three Rivers in Hertfordshire, that council district, property prices, it's actually people don't need to go to work because they can earn more money just staying at home. Such is the rise in house value. So if you've got a house in the Three Rivers area, don't go to work. Your house is earning money for you.
Well, of course, there are lies, damned lies, etc. The fact is, in the home counties, over the last 10 years, house prices have risen at most 2% per annum. Now think about that. Everyone believes that house prices have been rising 5 or 6% a year. Well, they have for a few years, but they forget that in 2008, house prices fell 20-25%. So overall, over 10 years, you're looking at no more than 2% per annum, and this is with the lowest interest rates in human history. We've had a 0.5% base rate for now 7 of the last 10 years. The base rate can effectively not go any lower, therefore mortgage rates are unlikely to go any lower. Okay. So whatever support there's been from falling interest rates for 40 years, it's ended.
But when it comes to pension, I mean, you mentioned just a few minutes ago that you should save. Of course, the onus is on us as individuals to save. Fine if you're earning a lot of money. If you're on the average salary, where on earth do you save 15% of your pay packet to invest in a pension pot somewhere?
I couldn't agree more, and I think if only the media would focus on the big picture. The big picture is that for the last 40 years, the politicians have been promising us that they will do more for us and it won't cost us any more. But what have they in taxes? But what have they actually been doing? They've been borrowing like Billy-O. Well, the government now owes £1,600 billion. We appear to be at the end game where they've got to hold the hand up and say, look, we can't do this anymore. You are going to have to pay what you should have been paying over the last 4 decades. And it's not just the Conservatives. I'm telling you, the other parties would be doing the same.
So do we have to accept, unless you've got one of these gold-plated cast-iron pension that you get if you're an MP, for example, leader of a council, or you're the head of a big corporation, most of us will have to carry on working until we drop dead or hope that we win the lottery, which is never going to happen?
We have to think very carefully what we're doing about our finances. Too many folk are living for today. Too many folk have put their faith, their belief in houses. They have to take a review of all that and consider very carefully if house prices don't rise over the next 20, 30 years, which is certainly my view, and if incomes, bearing in mind incomes haven't risen for years, if that continues, well, we're going to have to cut our cloth according to our situation, and we can no longer rely on other people to bail us out.
When because you predict a break in the system, when this system breaks, what could be the reality, Jonathan?
It seems to me that we are in the process of what I've coined on Twitter, turning Japanese. What I mean by that is Japan for 20-plus years until recently, it was the second largest economy on the planet, had zero economic growth, zero inflation, and a massive fall in house prices and a massive fall in the stock market, which of course is people's pensions. So if we are turning Japanese, and I repeat, we've had basically no interest for 7 years already, we've had lackluster economic growth, wages have not been rising, so if we're turning Japanese, we have to expect what's called an economic depression, which means very low or no economic growth for 10-plus years.
Jonathan,
and people will have to bear that in mind when they're planning their retirement.
Doomsday scenario, if all goes belly up, can I sell my house and come and live in the pool house in your garden?
You can even come and live in our bathroom.
That's very kind. And when the BBC eventually get rid of me, won't be long now, can I come and will you give me a job as a driver? I could drive you around, Jonathan.
Fantastic, except I work from home.